Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is Carol Dimitrov, and today we are welcoming Shannon Gill and Russell Ohlhausen. They are going to be talking about sexuality in the Aquarian Age, merging the opposites within. What does the future hold for human sexuality? What can we learn from ancient knowledge and secret teachings? In this short talk, we will explore the deeper cosmic mystery of duality, polarity, and ultimately unity. Society is shaped by subconscious energies that both separate us and magnetize us to push forward towards our own evolutionary purposes. The dark will always seek the light, and the light will never know itself without the shadow. As for our part in human consciousness, we can take lessons from the ancient sacred temples and occult knowledge of the masculine and feminine, of God, and as a collective in the shift of the ages. And a little bit about Shannon. Shannon Gill synthesizes Evolutionary Astrology, Jungian counseling, and Sacred Embodiment practices to create a transformative healing experience for clients. Her academic background includes studies in Buddhist psychology, movement therapy, soul work, and indigenous ceremonial arts. Shannon has a private astrology practice and serves as president of the Austin Astrological Society and the secretary for OPA. Today, and together with partner Russell, she is co-director of the ASTRAM Astrologers Alliance and Lotus Bend Sanctuary, a spiritual day retreat in Austin, Texas that offers retreats and workshops. And you can reach out to her at www.Shannon, and I'm going to spell it ShannonLeigill.com, and that'll be also posted as well, and it's in your writings, your email. And a little bit about Russell. He is a national and international astrologer and conscious catalyzer with lifetime study of science, religion, myth, metaphysics, and most importantly, nature. His works are currently being taught as a fundamental theory of astrological mechanics. He works with the concept of celestial embodiment through the head, heart, and hands, rooted in sacred dance and ceremony with partner Sharon. And for more information on Russell, you can go to www.RITESOFTHESUN. So it's right of the sun, and right with an RITE. So thank you very much, and it's all yours. We look forward to your presentation.
Hi, great. It's great to be with everyone, wherever you are, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening. We're coming to you from Austin, Texas today. Finally, a beautiful sunny day, and hopefully share some information about a topic that interests a lot of people, and very curious in the world today.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. Hello, OPA. Really excited to be here with you all today. We were going to just turn off one thing on our computer here. Is it not working?
No, it won't. We don't have time.
Okay.
So, well, before we get started, we are going to have our traditional, very short 60-second meditation. So, Shannon?
That's right. Actually, if you are able to take a moment, if you're not driving, if you're able to just close your eyes for just a moment. We like to practice head, heart, and hands, and go ahead and just find the present moment in your body. Feel your feet on the earth. Negotiate your spine if you can with micro movements, reaching up towards the heavens. And bring your awareness to the line of energy, the vessel that lives between you, the earth, and the heavens. And together, if we can just draw in a couple of deep breaths up through the soles of the earth, through the soles of your feet, through the Sushumna line, all the way up through the crown of the head, holding for just a couple of moments, reaching with your awareness up into the cosmos, feeling into our connection to the universe, and then releasing. slowly down, cascading back through the Sushumna line into the earth, releasing any density, any tension, and returning to your normal breath. And go ahead and open your eyes.
And with that in mind, I like to remind everyone to take in what resonates with you. Hopefully something will be in resonance with you, and to let go of anything that does not resonate with you or you may find issue with. Just remember to do that as we move forward. And just again, a little bit about us. Shannon?
Well, I think Carol actually covered it beautifully. Thank you, Carol.
Well, yeah, and you're a student of Maurice Fernandez's professional evolutionary astrology program. I make sure you.
Yes, that's exactly true. Yeah, and I think that one of my biggest passions is the integration of the astrological and the cosmic language into the body. And part of my work has been to create ecstatic dance ceremonies and experiences for community to actually call in the heavenly energies into the body and create a platform for experience that we can actually transcend the mind and integrate the knowledge and return to our sort of cosmic essence within the body. And so I founded an ecstatic dance in Boulder, and we recently were able to bring the dance ceremony to the OPA retreat in Utah, and that was very exciting, and we look forward to offering more of this embodiment practice to the astrological community.
And again, you heard a little bit about me. Also, I'm very involved in the Astrological Society of Austin, working on both the national and international communities to bridge science and spirituality. So this is always a fun part to remind people that sexuality is also spiritual. Some of the things I usually teach about are mathematical, more mind-oriented. So part of these processes have been good for me personally to get back into my body and remind myself that we're united there too. For mental people, this can be a challenge. Astrology has no more useful function than this: to discover the inmost nature of a man and to bring it out into his consciousness, that he may fulfill it according to the law of light. Well, I like that. Aleister Crowley said it, if anyone's familiar with his work. But we've made a slight change to that. The inmost nature of humanity, to bring it out into our consciousness, that we may fulfill it according to the law of light.
So today what we're going to be going over with you is the essence of the ages, the steps of the collective dance, the alchemical process, the divine solve de coagula, the sexual principle, the vital force, the effects it's having on humanity, lead to gold, and the future paradigm, the giant leap for mankind.
So basically where we are in time, what we're moving through in process, why this particular principle is important to the process, what we're hoping to achieve, and how that may look in humanity. So when people talk about the age of Aquarius and how it may affect us in the future, a lot of people have an idea. So is this what you may think of when you think of the age of Aquarius?
When the moon is in the seventh house, and Jupiter lines Mars, then peace will guide the planets, and love will still start. This is Johnny about the age of Aquarius, the age of Aquarius. Harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abound. No false alterations, golden living dreams of visions, mystic crystal revelation, and the mind's true liberation. Seven times and took the time to find it. Then peace will guide the planets and love will steer the sun. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius. Aquarius.
That's the same one.
Well, I hope some people will get the humor in that. That's what I grew up thinking of the age of Aquarius, and I think we're looking at something a little bit different these days. Let's move forward on this slide. So what it could mean is something totally different. A lot of people think the age of Aquarius may be very regimented and totalitarian and rigid with the nature of Saturn that comes with that, and there may be an element of quality that arises as we progress into this age that we restrict ourselves from sexuality. Aquarius can be known for that. And this could be taken to an extreme, almost dystopian type of model. It also has some ramifications. You see this idea of this collective mind in a lot of sci-fi. And one television show, the Star Trek, where they encounter the Borg, which is about a collective mind, and there is going to be an element of collective mind that comes out of working together in unity. But hopefully it won't go to such extreme as melding this with technology, as some say it will. This is how they live in such a rigid structure, very, very Saturnine. But here if anyone who understands what's happening with this particular series, there turns out to be a queen of this collective that is above the rest of the Aquarian mass, and I think that this image represents the Leo polarity with this Captain Picard and the Queen of the Hive Mind needing a mate, seeking a mate to move further into evolution. I think you see this here. In the end, we'll all be assimilated into the oneness, and I think that point hits home. This is another way to view what might be happening now as we transfer into the age of Aquarius, the age of Pisces, into the next age. The Garden of Earthly Delights, which was painted around 1500. It's a Bosch painting, and this is very chaotic, and I think the shifts we're moving into are going to have a lot of chaos, as you see with the Uranian side of Aquarius. This is considered an ancient, saying. It's an ancient saying, but many believe it to be a blessing, but it's actually a Chinese curse that may we live in these interesting times of chaos. So the Aquarian energy has a particular flavor that we can relate to a little bit in its revolutionary idea that we saw last time Pluto was in Aquarius, where we're getting ready to go now. And you can just ask double Scorpio Marie Antoinette what happened when the Aquarian energy he came to meet her and her double Scorpio self. She lost her head. Here's another little slow. So what we're talking about as far as the ages is where we are in space and time, and pull back and look at the larger picture of our galaxy and what this means. The concepts of the ages are seen in many cultures. You see this in Mayan, you see this in Vedic. This is an example of the yugas that we see in Vedic astrology, where representing here, we're around the awakening period from the Kali Yuga, which is the darkness. to remerge into the light. So there's an integration that's happening there. You can see in this particular diagram. Zodiologically in the West, this concept of precession can be traced in the Bible, the concept of the ages. And I like this set of diagrams and this quote that was attached. Revelations 22, the river of life. The angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb down of the middle of the great street of the city. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree are for healing of the nations. So looking at this through the cosmic lens, the river, of course, being the Milky Way flowing through dividing the zodiac into halves to this river, and the two uniting is the tree of life in essence. So this is affected, this cycle is affected in what we call the precession of the equinoxes.
Yeah, so basically an epoch of time is affecting the development of humanity. It has to do with political, social, climate. A zodiological age is approximately 2160 years, and there are 12 ages that correlate to the 12 zodiacal signs.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we go. So to think of this in space first, our solar system travels across a galactic center in a wavy form. So anyone who doesn't understand what we're talking about, precession of the equinox, it has to do with the larger movements that happen with the solar system, the sun system around the galaxy. So this is what it looks like in relationship to the galaxy, how we cross this, as we move through the cycle, we cross the center of the galactic plane. This is one perspective. And at these points, in some schools of thought, are known as gates, and the Golden Gate and the Silver Gate are referenced in history. So the cycle of the ages really, in most aspects, or most fields of astrology, we do have an understanding that year zero occurred between the Piscean age and the age of Aries. You can see this in the Bible as the concept of the alpha and the omega point there being one. So this would have occurred around year zero. The cycle lasts around 25,000 years ago, 25,900 years. Some of the yugas will say 2,400 years. Excuse me, the teachers of the yugas will say other numbers, but it's approximately 25,000 years to go around the zodiological cycle. Half of that cycle is descending from the Golden Age, and the other half is ascending back into the Golden Age through this process. We're approximately here, right around this time. Many astrologers may disagree. Some say we entered into this 300 or 400 years ago. Some say we're 1,000 years out. Some say we're a few hundred. But we're in this cusp zone, according to many of the traditions. We are making this shift into the Aquarian Age. So this would reference the cusp, which we'll speak about in a second. So the fixed signs are of importance in this process. We have the polarity aspect of Leo with the Aquarian Age we're entering into, and through several thousand years ago you would have had the fixed signs of Taurus and Scorpio that are affecting the process. So we create axes that are important to remember when we're talking about a particular sign or age. This applies in general astrology, but it applies to thinking in the terms of the precession as well. So just a concept of how this works is that in the age of Aquarius, there's a reintegration with the collective mind, the male and female, as the oneness, and begin to understand and remember itself. Now, this had devolved from the age of Leo, which was where the self was integrated through the initial act of creation. That initial form is just itself already understanding its androgyne principle of the male and the female. So as we move through the ages in our solar system, there's a desire to seek out the physical world, to have a relationship with it, and to understand this is energetic, and this is to unmerge with spirit and to experience the material realm. And the process reverses as you move through the ages, and we're at a point now where the collective needs to know itself again, to be reminded of the two-ness and the oneness within the two-ness, so that the seed, as we work our way around the fixed signs, there's a process of unmerging from the collective mind and reuniting with spirit as one again. So this process continues through these fixed signs. So this is an interesting way to think about this with a taurocracy, with the polarity of Scorpio and Taurus. This is found in the British Museum, and at the base of these Mithraic statues, at the bottom of whether it's a relief or a statue, you'll often see this connection with the Scorpio attacking the bull sack. We're going to have some explicit language in this talk, but which represents the power and the force of life, the strength of the bull, and the life force itself to connect with material. And in the death process, where Scorpio energy, its polar opposite in the zodiac, is attacking this force of life. This is where you might find this balance of life and death mythologically. So working with the age of Aquarius, the polar opposite is also a divine aspect of the hermetic or hermaphroditic principle. That Adam, in this image, Adam was the first representation of the higher God self, which was androgynous or hermaphroditic. So you see in these paintings and sculptures, you will often see the hermaphroditic principle in some concept or another by using the small genitalia on the male, which represents the evolved masculine. So this connects these concepts of the higher and the lower parts of ourself to this polarity of Leo and Aquarius. In ancient Egypt, this was a common concept. It referenced the as above, so below, with this golden tiara, with the vulture and these cobra serpents, and the same thing with I believe this is Tutankhamun, found in Tutankhamun's tomb. This same energy emerging from the third eye, this connection of the higher, that which flies in the air, and that which crawls upon the ground, and that they are merged as one to see the world in a new way. And that's what this polar aspect of Leo and Aquarius is about. And this leads us into where we're moving into now, the new age.
Great. So now we're going to start breaking this down just a little bit and talking and bringing this home. Some of the Aquarian keywords most of us are familiar with is individualism, rebelliousness, freedom-seeking. It's often the awakener, the idealist energy, very objective.
Well, we seem to be missing that.
There we go. Unconventional, futuristic, revolutionary, higher-minded, radical, and electric. Really here to midwife the new age. I always think about Aquarian energy or Aquarian people as being from the future, and here to make sure that we are on the right track. So,
or often to get onto to a different track.
Right. Their own track.
So we get on the right track and off the one we may be on. So the Aquarian Age is about returning us to this wholeness, the sacred divine water you see referenced here in this image being poured upon the earth to reinvigorate it, the elixir of life. And this when we drink this elixir of life, the new energy coming in, it is activating, it already is activating this concept of the divine androgyne.
Right. So basically what we're talking about is this returning to this direct knowing and direct connection of source energy. This, what represented is the wholeness. And that happens through the integration of the polarities, the integration of the masculine and the feminine, the mother and the father, the return of the Christ bride. You see this in ancient texts with the sacred posture of the Yab Yam. And it's through this alchemical process that the flow of the waters that you see there is returned, which is the spiritual essence returning to life, returning to humanity, and really the illusion of separation begins to dissolve back into what's known as the Purusha, which is the one mind or the oversoul. And so, you know, a lot of the signs or the archetypes have key phrases. With Aquarius, it is, I know God within myself. The contrast is, well, we'll get to that in just a second. Carl Jung developed a lot of work. He was an astrologer, most of us know that, and he did a lot of work developing, you know, prophecy about this new age. And he actually talked quite a bit about the oversoul and about returning to this state of union, moving from water, from the unconscious element, to the air, which is the enlightened, the higher mind, from animalistic, the two fish, to the symbolism being this angelic human, which he also laid out a lot of work and steps to help people on that journey of evolution, which we're going to get into here in our presentation.
So where we are in this time, or at least where we figure, is that we are in this Pisces-Aquarius cusp. There are many who debate this, but when does it begin, or has it already begun? So that's one of the big questions about a cusp. Many people are very absolute as to where we are, and I would like to leave it a little bit of ambiguity as to where we may be. But we do know we're in the vicinity of this Piscean Aquarian cusp. So coming out of this age of Pisces has a certain energy or an effect that has changed humanity to where it is now.
Right. So looking back, you know, as we're talking about, we're moving into this time period of integration. The contrast is that we've been living in an epoch of division between matter and spirit, between the mind and the heart, between flesh and the spiritual realm. And there was a cultural emphasis definitely on faith and religion, on something outside of the self, you know, believing in you know, an icon, or having to have an intermediary between you and source or God. And there was a perpetual struggle for power and hierarchy, and the key phrase for Pisces was I believe, as opposed to I know.
Well, in this process, of course, there's a lot of confusion that occurred around sexuality and misappropriation. It was very manipulated, and part of it was part of our own sexual identity was repressed deliberately by the church to keep this concept of this energy of the hermaphrodite or the androgyne down, which was the balancing of the feminine within the masculine. And there was a deliberate effort in this during this age. But one thing to remind us is that in the Piscean glyph, you see this thread, the golden thread that binds the two fish so that they're never separated, spirit from matter, masculine and feminine. All opposites are always united somehow, even in the most disparate of times. So as we enter this new age of Aquarius, we're going in the reverse of the traditional zodiac, and using modern deaconship, we are moving into the Libra deacon of this new age. And this Libra deacon actually has to do with the yoking of humanity back into the spiritual self, and with the feminine and the masculine.
Exactly. And so if we're talking about evolution and we're talking about integration, then whenever we feel into the Libra archetype, we understand that the soul has the awareness that can really only evolve so far alone. And that's where we have this platform within the relationship dominion to view that as a crucible, to understand that through partnership or through relationship, through intimacy, actually all types of relationship, there's an alchemical process that occurs that can facilitate and accelerate this evolution of the soul through, you know, burning through of illusions, through what I like to call the sacred mirror of seeing aspects in ourselves that through that reflection of, you know, the vibration of whatever energy it is that we're attracting in from the outside. Through Libra, we're also going to be, the soul's going to be seeking balance of all polarities, light and dark, masculine and feminine, you know, mind and heart. And through this this potential practice, alchemy can occur, and the union can accelerate this process.
So in the alchemical process, we have to remind ourselves we're working with primal elements and primal matter. This primal matter, the prima materia in Hermetic principle, is the stuff before stuff. It's basically the unformed, unchanging clay that enters into the world of elements to be shaped and formed from the outside. And I love this image. I think this came from Julius Simmons, who used it recently, but we had to use it for this presentation because it was a lovely image of the elements and the center energy working those elements. So in this process, the primary aspect of what we are changing on the outside is the soul. The seat of immutable consciousness is our soul.
And so from the evolutionary perspective, the soul is the immutable consciousness that has its own identity that does stay intact from life to life. It's the eternal essence of embodiment. Carl Jung, of course, developed a lot of work on the soul, and he recognized that intertwined in the soul is the masculine, the feminine dimensions, and known as the anima and the animus. And they're trying to find discernment and discrimination through union. The function of the soul is really to facilitate the process of evolution, but it's known to have what is considered a dual desire nature. There's a desire to separate from that which it was created, and then it is this returning desire to go back and to remember that union. That's a lot where a lot of the struggle and the pain comes in our human existence, is that illusion of separation. But that in itself is part of what facilitates this process of evolution, and it enacts the drama of our lives very clearly. So when we're talking about alchemy, and we're talking about the soul's process and journey, basically what is happening and what is being asked of us is to sift through the illusion, to sift through all of these false needs or false desires. It's like the soul is searching for that place, trying to remember that state of oneness. And in that process, there's where a lot of pain comes in. And so the intent is to eliminate those separating desires and to surrender and to let go. And a lot of this happens through the Scorpio archetype and through the emotional body. And eventually, the soul realizes that the only dominant desire that is left is to return home, to return to source. However, we do have free will, and we are responsible for our own karmic evolution.
Through this process, what we're calling the divine alchemical process, we are achieving something. We are creating something higher out of something lower. We are processing the ore of the conscious and subconscious to extract the gold. And this is known as the great work. I love this image. I have the full image of this, but this is about the processes of alchemy, the alchemical primary steps of going from Negredo to the Rubedo. Through the process here, you see the at the top of the crown, the Azoth, the Caudia pavonis, the peacock's tail, the splendor of understanding this reality and how it connects to spirit at the crown chakra. As we're moving down on this particular image, you see the masculine and the feminine on the left and the right side. This great work, we often see it in Hermetics, is known as the Magnum Opus. What we're looking at here is the combining of dual matter, that which is feminine or the solar, and that which is masculine and solar, and that which is feminine and lunar are being combined in one entity. You see this also in precious metals in the ancient world, where gold and silver were combined, or they were found in raw states together, and it was called electrum, having to do with its electric quality of using two metals of that quality together, precious quality together. This image is also referred to as the divine hermaphrodite, and what we're trying to get to is the reddening or the wholeness that is outside, that connects to the source. And that is part of the process. It's a great word. Also, you see images like this in Hermetics. This has to do with the planets climbing the mountain. So each side of this mountain, underneath the mountain, is the process of steps of alchemy, and this what we've just been discussing already with the being in the inner chamber of ourself to do the process of combining the solar and the lunar. With the, in this case, it's the eagle arising from the top of this dome, or dome representing our crown once unified. And the process is facilitated by the planets and the zodiac. Now, at the very top, you see Hermes. This is where the Hermetic principle comes into play as to why Hermes, which is considered the divine, one of the divine androgynes, and his part to play in our process. Again, the overall concept is converting the lead, the dense matter, Saturnine, into gold, Leo. So this is, again, connecting the Aquarius and the Leo Lucius here, and traditionally.
So that brings us to, the main focus of our talk around, sexuality as being a transformative agent in this process of evolution and in this new age. So we're just going to briefly go over some basic understanding what is sexual energy. It's basically the creative life force of the entire universe. It's not something that resides simply in the genitals. Most of us probably know that. It's the universal energy of consciousness itself. It is the sacred energy of God, and it is the bringer of health and vitality, and it is the catalyst of transcendence. And that's really key to the focus of our talk, really understanding what's available to us through a more expansive understanding of sexual energy. So there's many names for this force: chi, prana, elan vital, it's of life, the mystic fire. As in all of life, there's duality. And so when we look at sexual energy, we're looking at the light and the dark. And again, we're not making judgment. We're actually trying to integrate here. So the light aspects are procreation and the pleasure, the enrichment of emotional bonds, the increasing of the life force, the creative force. It is the creative essence behind all of life, not just procreation. Is the giver of vitality and health, has the capacity to heal the darker aspects of our unconscious psyche, and gives us access to the heavenly realms. Some of the shadowy aspects are lust, obsessiveness, predatory impulsivity, addictions, manipulations. A lot of this has come through the cultural distortion and what we're really trying to evolve through by liberating and returning to the reverence around this dimension of life and dimension of process of being. So whenever we're talking about, sex and the evolutionary intention in this new age, what is, I think, primary in this shift of understanding is the merging of our sexuality with spirituality. And this is not something that necessarily has been taught to us. There's actually been quite the opposite, and we're trying to heal from a lot of dogma and shame and repression that has come through just a lot of the past in our history. And it's basically understanding that we have this capacity of the merging of flesh and spirit as we embrace this alchemical potential, and has also the capacity to balance our systems, to raise our vibration. If you get deeper into some of these understandings, in which we're going to talk about, and deeper into this path, the process of ascension becomes really available. The dissolving of the illusion of the separate self going on, and having experiences of different levels of consciousness and even different realms. And so really looking at this as part of a path is to, follow this pleasure principle to return to a state of home, which is union.
Well, of course, we're not the first to figure this out. This is something we see in a lot of ancient practices, particularly in the higher cultures. You saw this in Greece, you saw this in Egypt, of course, a little more debased in the Roman period, but it's spiritually enhanced in India through the process of the Vedic connection, or the yoking. And the spiritual practice of Tantra, particularly Maithuna, meaning sexual union, is one of the many divisions of Tantra, is an ancient practice that involved sexual energy, not just the act of sex. And it was the weaving and expansion of this energy that, literally weaving, that created the impulse for the higher force to bust through the mind and into the cosmos through the crown. This happened through this process, through the reunion of opposites, male and female. And they're represented usually in the yod-yang that you see here, but it is actually not simply a woman and a man. It is the energy representation itself that is important to take in when you see these sculptures like this. Good. Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, and so, you know, we see this, and we can look back in the Hindu creation parable of the Shiva and Shakti. You know, Shakti being the goddess, the life force itself, and Lord Shiva representing the divine masculine, the God consciousness. And she danced for him, and she invoked this energy, which is representative of this yoking, or of this union of the divine masculine and feminine energies that finally sparked the Kundalini, basically, and he opens his third eye, and all of the universe explodes into creation. And we can look to that as a metaphor for what's the potential on this level of practice.
So this understanding was often seen in the ancient temples, and it's been confused by many moderns as being perverted or debased or lustfully oriented. But all of these images have to do with forms of connecting to the boundless self, the higher self. Some of them are a little perverse, but then again, the boundless self can be perverse. So dedicating to this practice can be a little precarious to some, and it can go into the underworld, the darkness. As you see upon this one statue of the woman, she has the scorpion climbing up her thigh. You often see this in the temples there, particularly this temple of love. What was the name of this temple?
Khajuraho.
Khajuraho. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there still to this day there are pilgrimages that are taken to these temples to remember and to honor. And there's actual sacred holy days where they come and they honor these practices and the integration of these energies that was just in the awareness in the collective during this time.
Well, I think we should take a tour to one of those.
I think we should.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're powered.
We are going to India again in 2020.
So, yeah.
So we're going to break this down just a little bit, and I know we need to be aware of time. What is the Kundalini? You know, it is actually the life force itself that is named Shakti, and it is in everyone. It is something that is innate in us because it is us. It is actually an energy that is sleeping or dormant that resides at the base of the spine. It's known as the primordial energy, and it manifests as prana, as the life force. It sits in the lower chakral area, in the sacral genital area, the Scorpio domain. It's known often as the seat of the soul. And so when we're talking about the Kundalini Awakening, what we're talking about is what is this electromagnetic spark that can happen through this integration process, this alchemical process, the merging of the opposite energies, masculine and feminine, the coming together through specific breath, through specific posture and asana, through intention. The Shakti can awaken and begin to spiral up the left and right energy channels of the body, which is the chakra line you see there. You know, all of these chakras actually hold energy, they hold memory, they hold wounds. and there's often blockage. And so through this practice, we have the capacity to clear out the energy line and to become in union with, once again, the higher energy, you know, with the heavenly cosmos. And so that is, you know, the ultimate. I mean, it's not that anyone can just sit down and have this happen. This is a devotional practice that requires a lot of reverence and requires two people that have done a lot of their own internal work of balancing the masculine and the feminine.
Yeah, so what's happening inside is important to remember, is that through this fusion of the opposites, the energy is sparked at the base of the spine, and it pushes itself up. And you see this in this image where you're connected to the root chakra, and out of the through the center sushumna, where the two meet, up to the top of the crown, it is enlightened. A halo of geometric energy. I like that fact. Is pouring out of this crown to connect to the oneness. And this is about the dissolution of duality within, and everything that keeps you bound to your identity of self, and to connection to individuated self, to reconnect to higher self. It's basically surrendering, at least for a moment, the ego self. Not to say that you shouldn't keep your ego self around. It's just that part of the process of understanding is to go through this and to dissolve your ego. Right, and you know, it is an experience and it is a practice, but I think that the intention and the eventuality can be that you start to live in a higher state of consciousness. That yes, you may have these peak experiences during the practice, but eventually what it's doing is it's burning off the lower vibrations, you know, the obstructions to the light, so that you can actually exist in a higher state, an elevated state of vibrational consciousness, which ultimately is love. It is, you know, bliss and ecstasy is the felt experience of divine love. So some other ways that the Kundalini can be activated are not just through partner practice, but through meditation, through having sex with a very awakened person. Sometimes illness or tragedy can also cause those to awaken. Some people have come in from past lives already awake. I definitely know someone like that. Some of us have been, you know. Some of us remember past lives. But the process is a process of healing. You see this Hermetic principle in the staff of Hermes, in the caduceus, which is representing the medical community of the modern age, which I currently disagree with. But it's a symbol for medicine. It is a symbol for the healing and return of the vital forces. The center staff is known as the staff of Hermes, the androgyne. The Ida and the Pingala are represented here, wrapping around the Sushumna. The alchemical process that we're talking about is the achievement of the philosopher's stone, but you represented in a way by the sphere at the top. The snakes are the scorpionic transformation, which we talked a moment about. This working with the fixed signs. The scorpionic energy is what initiates this from the root. These are the male and female. This is what we're talking about when the Kundalini begins to move. This central portion at the third eye, where the opposites kiss, the two serpents kiss, and they produce a drop of fluid, which is the elixir of life. This activates the crown, and rings sprout out symbolically, and we are able to fly into the heavens with the eagles and the gods. So again, this is about the chakral movement. This is connecting through the body, which we know is connected astrologically. You see this represented throughout history, ancient history, medieval history, with the zodiac man. This is a Persian variation of this concept. Scorpio at the root there. Quickly, because I'm noticing time, you know, how does it feel? Well, it happens in stages. It's not, you know, you can have a, you know, blast of awakening, but usually it's over a period of time. It can also be very intense and difficult. You know, it's like it tears off the gates of the unconscious often, and a lot of the repressed or the shadow material can come out with a force. It can cause nervous system issues, but ultimately what's going on is a purification of the mind, body, spirit, and it can happen very, very rapidly. And this is what we're talking about with this sense of Adam and Eve still being connected through the oneness. This tree of life is part of that concept that being within the androgyne and hermaphroditic energy allows you to become a transceiver of light. So sexuality is a practice in many cultures because it involves embracing the dual sides of ourselves. It is how we know the other, so we can balance parts of ourselves that we could not recognize otherwise. I like to refer to my Sag ascendant side as the beast and the priest. So it's a higher and the lower working together. This is an evolutionary process in relationship. So coming back to a larger scope of what we're looking into with Aquarius. Aquarius is represented by Ganymede, the water bear. Not everyone knows that Ganymede is the water bear, but what Ganymede was the beautiful boy in which Zeus absconded from Earth and made the cupbearer of Mount Olympus. And this was known because he was a beautiful boy. Puts Jupiter in the realm of homosexuality, bisexuality, open gender, and so it opens the mind when you think of this particular myth that often initiates many people with this concept through the aspect of Aquarius into our larger sexual nature. So how this may affect, how it is affecting relationship styles now is dissolving much of the classical monogamy, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think that because of the impetus to find that Aquarian enlightenment, we are breaking through paradigms that were based out of fear, based out of is the separate self, which a lot of the classical relationship styles weren't necessarily based on spiritual principles. They were based on the other person fulfilling something and staying together no matter what. And so this Aquarian thrust towards, returning to direct connection, is catalyzing people to have different impulses in the relationship styles. And here are some, that we're seeing. We won't go through all of them.
But the few at the bottom I find interesting are new into our lexicon: the polypod, working with polyamorous pods or quads, and the polycule I was introduced to recently. Here's a cup, which references the polycule, male, female, bisexual connections. And this could be what we're seeing with a return to some ancient concepts of tribal unity, but also with the energy of androgyny and play in our society, how people relate. Go ahead.
Right, and so just some statistics here. They're now saying that 1/3 of 18 to 34-year-olds are claiming to be bisexual. So that is a shift going on. And, Russell said, that maybe there's a turning away from monogamous relationships. I'm not sure that that's exactly accurate. What I am feeling is that there's a new level of relationship that's emerging that is more about serving one another on the soul level, where the commitment is actually to the soul evolution and not necessarily to the person. So I like this quote: perhaps an elevated model of relationships may comprise partners entering relationship with the intention of serving one another, the relationship becoming a sacred crucible and ecstatic alchemical container for the metamorphosis of the soul. So I think that there's a range. I think that monogamy is not going to go away completely, but that perhaps an elevated model is one where the commitment is more on a spiritual level. And so Carl Jung actually did a lot of work on some of these principles as well, and we've gone through some of this already. But the syzygy has to do with this, again, this integration of opposites within the human soul, the integration of the masculine, the feminine, and returning to the divine androgyne state. And this is working the alchemy, which can come from this intentional spiritual commitment to the soul evolution through the partnership. So I think that quickly we'll just, emphasize here that, this new level of relationship, I think I already touched on it, is about the partner as being divine and sovereign. It's about seeing the divinity in the other and serving one another in this level of awakening.
Yeah, I prefer the term spiritual crucible in this aspect because it is part of the alchemical process, which involves being burnt in a crucible in many ways to burn off our ego self. So I like that term.
I think that, we've already touched on this as well, but just that basically there's this emergence happening, that there's people that are awakening to understanding that there's more to relationship, that there's actually provides doorways that we can open for one another. The self functions as the union opposites and thus constitutes the most immediate experience of the divine, which is psychologically possible to imagine. That's a good quote by Carl Jung.
And so part of this can be seen in our understanding of gender itself. So these concepts of the hermaphrodite, the androgyne, which I've referred to many times, you see referred to in a lot of Hermetic work. This is a fundamental principle that can be threaded through all of the consciousness and the conscious awakening that we see happening on the planet, in my opinion. This is a 2nd century Roman statue that was found, I believe, in the 1600s, and it's called the Sleeping Androgyne. This has to do with the concept being put to sleep for now and dreaming our world as divided. And the returning and the awakening of the androgyne is what we are looking at as the guiding force in the new age. Looking at some historical references to the androgyne energy. These are several different females into Greek, Roman, and later period, 17th, 18th century, that reference the hermaphrodites or the hermaphroditus that embody the androgyne. So thinking in terms of where, when I grew up thinking of androgyny, it was something more along these lines. Not exactly, but what's happening here is taking this to a new step, a singular idea of androgyny moving into how one sees oneself from within, the lens in which we identify ourselves. These images reference that. This is something that is this awakening seems to be happening in the zeitgeist. It is, in my opinion, the Godhead coming back online in this process of moving into the Aquarian Age. And the God entity is not masculine nor feminine. It is the complete union of both. And we can see this, the effects of this playing down on the human psyche here.
And there has been a pretty marked increase in transgenderism or gender fluidity. They're saying that 3% of 9th through 11th graders are identifying as non-gender conforming. And, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, this was an amazing fact that British under 18 have been trying to treat this as an issue. And has risen 1,000% in just 5 years, unprecedented.
And I think that's a good point to make, is that it is being looked at by some conservatives as a disorder. They actually have named it gender dysphoria, and they're looking at it as dysfunction. And I think that that's one thing that to be aware of, is that having a higher understanding of this as part of the evolutionary path is really going to be important for these youth, for there to be support in that spiritual understanding. And, most of us are probably come across it, that there's now even appropriate languaging around this uprising and this new level of consciousness with the gender inclusive pronouns, where, they don't want to be, boxed in by a specific pronoun, and the proper etiquette nowadays is to actually ask, what pronoun would you prefer to go by? And here's a little diagram. I'm going to just kind of go through this quickly. We won't have time to practice, but no longer he or she, but often they would want to be referred to as they or ze. And so there's a learning curve for all of us to embrace here as we're moving into these new levels of evolution within gender and sexuality. And here's just some other terms, that you may or may not have heard. There's definitely just a huge emerging going on with this gender fluidity. There's bigender, there's transgender, there's agender, androgyny. So, we could spend actually a whole lecture going into some of those. And there are some parents, that are called gender creative parents that are choosing to not identify their children as either or, and even will hide the sex from the public so that they're not projected upon and discriminated upon either way. So there's a very interesting progressive movement. And so now bringing this down to the moment, working with, how can we align with the current transits that are upon us, that are sort of bringing some of this, catalyzing some of this movement forward. So as we know, we're finishing up this year of Jupiter in Scorpio, which has really been about shadow, sex, and soul. And so the emphasis on sexuality has really been at the forefront. It's also obviously been this opportunity to really bring to present the distortion, the woundedness, so that we can refine and clear out and heal from the misuse and the misunderstanding and the abuse upon this sacred path that is the essence of life itself. There's been this real interest in Tantra emerging as well, and as we know, with Uranus just moving into Taurus this year, we can really start working with this higher level of electromagnetic energy.
Well, that's the part I like most, being very Uranian myself and having a Taurus moon. The fact that it is coming into this 5-dimensional reality is merging with the 3rd-dimensional field of reality and causing an impulse into this awakening. You can look at it however you wish, but through this connection, it is opening us and increasing our capacity for knowledge and the knowledge of our own higher divine androgyne self. And this can partially be activated through practice couple of Tantra. You can do this solo if you wish, but through the masculine and feminine union externally, through whether it's, again, this is whether it's a heterosexual relationship, homosexual relationship, does not matter. It's the energy that is awakening us, allowing us to become a single transceiver for cosmic energy. So what this means for our future, really what it has to do with is a shift in our society, how we see ourselves as separate, breaking the boundaries of the individual mindset and considering everyone else as part of the self. That's the overall energy that's going to be echoed into the change of the society in this coming age. I put this in this quote. I won't read the whole quote, but this is by Buckminster Fuller, and this sums up the idea of the impact of what this could have on us. Because something that is intuitively sensed has the potential to change humanity and move us through certain parts of our growth struggle where we are in the cosmos. And it's not, no one can control it once it's happening from within. It cannot be exploited because it's an internal discovery of a fundamental principle. It dissolves all confusion. It dissolves controversy between the selves, and it prevails into society, into the world as we know it. It is the awakening, and he knows that, how important that is, Mr. Fuller.
So this is actually our final slide, and I just liked the image and also the progression and sort of the invitation to relax into a natural process that's happening. That, you know, sexuality is beyond what we have maybe thought of in recent past history, and that it's evolving, and it's evolving through us, and it's really through deeper embodiment. It's really through understanding ourselves as being vessels of higher consciousness energy and opening ourselves to that through our felt senses, through pleasure. You know, it's something that's really lacking, I feel like, in our culture, is that we're so driven by production and external reality. It's about turning inward and about just tuning into the reality that lives inside of us. And so pleasure and sexual energy lives in us if we just want to open to that.
I love this image because it is a fractal form, and I do tend to enjoy looking at fractals. But follow any thinking, feel into your emotions. I see these things and let go of any story. They stand out to me written here. And the fractal form is about moving yourself into infinity so that you can follow any one of these curves, these circles, and go and continue on forever. And the only way to do that is by letting go of anything you think of that is you, because you are everything. And how to find us, how to find Shannon, Shannon Gill, ShannonLeeGill.com. Again, I'm at rightsofthesun.com. And we run a little sanctuary here in Texas called Lotus Bend. We found at lotusbend.net. We're upgrading some of our websites. And we kind of umbrella most of this under the Shift Foundation. And Shannon wants you to know about one little thing.
Well, I have a private practice and I do give readings, and Russell and I often also give couples readings for any couples that would like to work in some of these areas. I have an exciting opportunity coming up in April. I'm taking a group of women to Crete to remember the divine feminine within and to actually return to, you know, a place where she reigned and where she was the goddess of the transmutation and of the sexual energies. It was a snake goddess as well. And so we're going to be embodying ecstatic dance and yoga, astrology, and divination. My partner Natalie is an amazing psychic, and she's going to be helping to guide us to find our direct connection to our higher self through practices in that arena.
And you're going to be visiting, I believe, the Magnum Opus.
Yes.
That's the Great Mother.
Yes,
so,
it's true. So if you're interested, let us know. And thank you so much for your time and presence today.
Thank you, Carol. Are there any questions? We have time? Or
yes, we do. If you have a few moments to answer
we can
questions, it would be wonderful. And I have to tell you, this retreat looks absolutely fantastic, Shannon. So, yes. Let me ask a couple of these questions very quickly. Diane is writing, what is the Yab Yum?
Shannon, you want to take that?
The Yab Yum is the posture, the asana of that you often see in the statues with the Shiva Shakti, it's the Indian style, you know, with the masculine or the man generally speaking on the bottom and the woman wrapped around him, also Indian style with her feet wrapped behind his back, which the purpose of that is the alignment of the spine from heaven to earth, and the connection of the two chakral systems being, you know, heart to heart, genital to genital, third eye to third eye, you know, opening up those channels.
Yeah, it represents the creation of the mystical union, the primordial mystical union, where through this left and right channel, this yoke is created. And part of the things that it yokes through Buddhism is the wisdom and compassion, putting the two, knowledge and compassion, together in the masculine and feminine form. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
And then another question is, why are we assumed to be in the Libra Decan?
This is just one school of thought, the question. The Libra Decan is the last decan when you're looking at decanships, in modern astrology. And I say assumed, it's just using that, working backwards in the zodiac. This is naturally where it would be. I find this interesting because of my study in Greek mythology is that the Libra was the yoke. It was known as the zygon in Greek. It was the yolking or the zygote, the egg, which was in one direction, the egg having divided, reversing in time, but the precession is reversing, moving from a many into a one, a re-yoking into this one zygotic state, this union. So assuming that is basically just on traditional rules, modern rules, excuse me.
Great, thank you. And then I have one more question, and that is, what is Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna?
Ida and Pingala are the Kundalini serpents that you see often. I showed those in reference to the caduceus. The two serpents are commonly known as Ida and Pingala, the masculine and the feminine solar and lunar sides of energy, of the energetic form. In this case, energetic form that is seated at the root chakra and is sleeping and teased to awaken, to move into the body. And the Sushumna is the energy core, the center of the body, the center line of our being. Where the chakra, where the chakras are aligned upon. This is referenced in the caduceus as the hermetic, the place where both left and right meet, this hermetic staff. If that gives any.
And the Ida and the Pingala is what you see represented as the snakes that are twisting and twirling around up through the spine and ascending into the heavens.
Fantastic. I think that clarifies that for Diane and maybe some others on the call. Thank you so much. This was really insightful. I am very excited to be able to put this recording out later. I know that everyone will really get a lot of value to go ahead and review not only the presentation, but to actually take their time really looking through these beautiful slides. The presentation was absolutely beautiful. So thank you for your time and attention to the beautiful graphics, and we really appreciate that.
Oh, thanks, Carol.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Well, thank you very much. And again, Shannon and Russ, thank you very much for this lovely presentation. And we look forward to seeing everyone on our next OPA presentation. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
What?